Right, I just read Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, 20 minutes of it. I covered quite a lot about his life and a bit about his philosophy and everything. I don't pretend to understand a word, so we'll go through and see if I can educate myself to do something marvellous. Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. Hegel redirects here for other uses, see Hegel disambiguation. Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, German blah blah blah, 27th of August 1770 to the 14th of November 1831, was a German philosopher. I wonder if it goes together. No, we don't want German. German philosopher, and is considered one of the most important figures in German idealism. German idealism. German idealism was a philosophical movement that emerged in Germany in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. It developed out of the work of Immanuel Kant in the 1780s and 1790s and was closely linked with both the Romanticism and the revolutionary politics of the Enlightenment. The best-known thinkers in the movement besides Kant were Johann Gottlieb Fichte, Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph Schelling, Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, and the proponents of Vienna Romanticism, Friedrich Hölderlin, Novalis, and Karl Wilhelm Friedrich Schlegel. August Ludwig Höslen, Friedrich Heinrich Jacobi, Gottlob Ernst Schulz, Karl Leonhard Reinhold, Salomon Maimon, Friedrich Schleiermacher, and Arthur Schopenhauer also made major contributions. The four principal German idealists, Immanuel Kant, upper left, Johann Gottlieb Fichte, upper right, Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph Schelling, lower left, Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, lower right. The period of German idealism after Kant is also known as post-Kantian idealism, post-Kantian philosophy, or simply post-Kantianism. Fichte's philosophical work has controversially been interpreted as a stepping stone in the emergence of German speculative idealism, the thesis that we only ever have access to the correlation between thought and being. Another scheme divides German idealists into transcendental idealists associated with Kant and Fichte, and absolute idealists associated with Schelling and Hegel. Meaning of idealism, main article idealism. The word idealism has multiple meanings. The philosophical meaning of idealism are those properties we discover in objects that are dependent on the way that those objects appear to us as perceived subjects. These properties only belong to the perceived appearance of the objects, not something they possess in themselves. The term ideaism is closer to this intended meaning than the common notion of idealism. The question of what properties a thing might have independently of the mind is thus unknowable and a moot point within the idealist tradition. History. Main article, Timeline of German Idealism. Immanuel Kant's work purported to bridge the two dominant philosophical schools in the 18th century. One, rationalism, which held that knowledge could be attained by reason alone, a priori, prior to experience, and two, empiricism, which held that knowledge could be arrived at only through the senses, a posteriori, after experience, as expressed by philosopher David Hume, whom Kant sought to rebuke. Kant's solution was to propose that, while we depend on objects of experience to know anything about the world, we can investigate a priori the former that our thoughts can take, determining the boundaries of possible experience. Kant called his mode of philosophizing critical philosophy, and that it was supposedly less concerned with setting out positive doctrine than with critiquing the limits to the theories we can set out. The conclusion he presented as above he called transcendental idealism. This distinguished it from classical idealism and subjective idealism, such as George Berkeley's, which held that external objects have actual being or real existence only when they are perceived by an observer. Kant said that there are things in themselves, noumena, that is, things that exist other than being merely sensations and ideas in our minds. Kant held in the Critique of Pure Reason, 1781, that the world of appearances, phenomena, is empirically real and transcendentally ideal. The mind plays a central role in influencing the way that the world is experienced. We perceive phenomena through time, space, and the categories of the understanding. It is this notion that was taken to heart by Kant's philosophical successor. Arthur Schopenhauer considered himself to be a transcendental idealist. In his major work, The World as Will and Representation, 1818 to 1819, he discusses his indebtedness to Kant, and the work includes Schopenhauer's extensive analysis of the Critique, which was what? Critique of Pure Reason, must be. The best-known German idealist thinkers, besides Kant, were Johann Gottlieb Fichte, Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph Schelling, and Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. The young Hegelians, a number of philosophers who developed Hegel's work in various directions, were in some cases idealists. On the other hand, Karl Marx, who was numbered among them, had professed himself to be a materialist in opposition to idealism. Another member of the young Hegelians, Ludwig Feuerbach, advocated for materialism and thought was influential in the development of historical materialism, where he is often recognized as the bridge between Hegel and Marx. Theorists. Immanuel Kant's transcendental idealism consisted of taking a point of view outside and above oneself transcendentally, and understanding that the mind directly knows only phenomena or ideas. Whatever exists other than mental phenomena or ideas that appear to the mind is a thing in itself and cannot be directly and immediately known. Kant criticized pure reason. He wanted to restrict reasoning, judging, and speaking only to objects of possible experience. The main German idealists, who had been theology students, reacted against Kant's stringent limits. It was Kant's criticism of all attempts to prove the existence of God which led to the romantic reaction of Fichte, Schelling, and Hegel. Kant sets out to smash not only the proofs of God, but the very foundations of Christian metaphysics, then turns around and postulates God and the immortality of the soul, preparing the way for Fichte and idealism. Jacobi, see also Leap of Faith. In 1787, Friedrich Heinrich Jacobi addressed in his book on faith, or idealism and realism, Kant's concept of thing in itself. Jacobi agreed that the objective thing in itself cannot be directly known. However, he stated it must be taken on belief. A subject must believe that there is a real object in the external world that is related to the representation or mental idea that is directly known. This belief is a result of revelation or immediately known, but logically unproved truth. The real existence of a thing in itself is revealed or disclosed to the observing subject. In this way, the subject directly knows the ideal, subjective representations that appear in the mind, and strongly believes in the real objective thing in itself that exists outside the mind. By presenting the external world as an object of belief, Jacobi legitimized belief. By reducing the external world to a matter of faith, he wanted many to open a little door for faith in general. Reinhold. Karl Leonhard Reinhold published 2 volumes of letters concerning the Kantian philosophy in 1790 and 1792. They provide a clear explication of Kant's thoughts, which were previously inaccessible due to Kant's use of complex or technical language. Reinhold also tried to prove Kant's assertion that humans and other animals can know only images that appear in their minds, never things in themselves, things that are not mere appearances in a mind. In order to establish this proof, Reinhold stated an axiom that could not possibly be doubted. From this axiom, all knowledge of consciousness could be deduced. His axiom was representation is distinguished in consciousness by the subject from the subject and object and is referred to both. He thereby started not from definitions but from a principle that referred to mental images or representations in a conscious mind. In this way he analysed knowledge into 1. The knowing subject or observer, 2. the known object, and 3. the image or representation in the subject's mind. In order to understand transcendental idealism, it is necessary to reflect deeply enough to distinguish experiences consisting of these three components: subject, subject's representation of object, and object. Schultz, Kant noted that a mental idea or representation must be a representation of something, and deduced that it is of something external to the mind. He gave the name of Ding an sich, or thing in itself, to that which is represented. However, Gottlob Ernst Schultze wrote anonymously that the law of cause and effect only applies to the phenomena within the mind, not between those phenomena and any things in themselves outside the mind. That is, a thing in itself cannot be the cause of an idea or image of a thing in the mind. In this way, he discredited Kant's philosophy by using Kant's own reasoning to disprove the existence of a thing in itself. Fichte. I'm bored.